Hello everybody and welcome back to another speed build on The Sims 3. I am back after a bit of an absence, simply because I had a lot of things come up lately. I had some finals going on, just a whole bunch of stuff was due, and it kind of consumed my life. And two, of course, if you've seen anything else on my channel by now, you know that I love custom content. And I've pretty much stopped getting new stuff now because I'm kind of happy with the way that my game is. But every now and then I'll see something that I want, and then as soon as I try to put that thing in my game, either installing it or downloading it, it inevitably mucks with something. So I have to go in and troubleshoot to get my game up working again. And so I did that a couple weeks back, and then I would just put off troubleshooting for a while. Yeah, for a while my game just was like dead and I just couldn't even play it. But I finally, I fixed it all. I took a day and I troubleshooted all the stuff, and now I'm back. So I figured I might as well come back with this guy because this guy has been sitting unfinished for a while and it needed to come up. So yeah. So this is a build based on the Manor from the Cinderella, the animated Cinderella film from 1950, so the original Walt Disney Cinderella. And this is Cinderella's house, or the Tremaine Manor as I'm calling it. Because in the film, if you do not know, the evil stepmother, her name is actually Lady Tremaine. And of course, even though Cinderella's, like, her father technically lived here, so it was Cinderella's house and her father's house, but then her father remarried to Lady Tremaine, and when Cinderella's father died, of course, Lady Tremaine got the estate, so now it's technically all belongs to her. And we all know how mean the stepmother is towards Cinderella, and she puts her own daughters before Cinderella, which, I mean, I guess that's just her thing. But yeah, so that is what this build is, and this build is also the interior only. If you want to see me build the exterior of this mansion, manor, estate, whatever you want to call it, there is a part 1 on my channel. I would suggest you go check it out. Also know that this is just a house. This is a manor. This is not Cinderella's castle. I have, however, created Cinderella's castle for The Sims 3. If you want to go check out my speed builds on that, I have part 1 and part 2. The exterior and interior respectively, also on my channel. Pretty proud of how those turned out. Turned out pretty cool, actually. So yeah, go check those out. So at this point you can see that I spend a lot of time on this entrance room because you actually see it pretty prominently in the film. Unfortunately, we couldn't have all those nice, beautiful rounded stairs that you see in the film. That's happened on other builds too for me, where they have these pretty just big rounded stairs, and we just can't do that. So I made a compromise. I did some split leveling. You'll also notice that throughout this build there are some very heavy color trends that I didn't really notice until I was making it. It is all green and then like plum colors, and white, I think, are the three. Yeah, those are pretty much the 3 main colors you see. And it's funny because you see a lot of green because in The Sims, of course, we're looking down. So the floor becomes more prominent in our like visual. Because like in the movie, things seem a little bit more lighter, and that's because you actually see a lot more of the walls. While throughout this build, I'm looking down all the time. So it's like green is everywhere. But that's what it looks like, and as you know, if you know my channel, I am a stickler for accuracy. I try to make things as on point as possible. So I was referencing my photos as I was making this, and that's how green it is and how plum it is. So that's what you're gonna do. So this is, of course, like I said, the entry room, which I did end up splitting into 2 at some point along this building process, because it was just such a big room. But mainly this is the scene where Cinderella, what's it called? She's washing the floor and singing her little song with the bubbles. Like, that's like a pretty memorable scene, at least in my head. The next room that I work on here that I just started is, it's like a foyer, I want to call it. This is also a room that we see in the film. It's where there's a piano and the stepmother and the stepsisters are practicing their song rather atrociously. So all the colorations and the flooring and stuff in this room is based off of that. I did end up adding an extra half though that has like sofas and things, because at a certain point I have to try to guess and check and fill up the space somehow. The other thing is that the layout of this build, while I did lay this out as best as I could, in order for like the interior to kind of match the exterior, I had to change around where some rooms are located in order for them to work. And so even though things aren't exactly correct as far as layout goes, I think it works better this way. And it makes actually a lot of sense this way as well. Like, I think, for instance, the kitchen is supposed to be on the right side of the house instead of the left like I have it. But like I said, just as far as whole layouts go, it did not work out. And like, all the rooms are also very, very big and very tall, I should say, as all the rooms look in the film. And quite honestly, there just wasn't room for that. And if I already built a castle on a 64 by 64 lot, I did not want this manor to be that big, like as big as a castle. And that's what I would have had to done to get like proportions exactly correct. So I just settled with nice populations, the colors, and spacing, and of course decorations. I'm pretty proud of how the decorations all turned out in this build. But yeah, you'll see that I spend a lot of time on texturing and getting those little details right. But yeah, so like I said, this is the Foyer Room. So Cinderella is one of my favorite fairy tales. I think I mentioned that in the part 1 of this video. But I like Cinderella. I don't know why, but it like touches me. Like, you know, like that you can withstand hardships and stuff and still come out like okay because you were kind, which is very unlike my nature. I can be very spiteful when I want to be, but Cinderella still gets to me. I like it. It's a good movie. It's a good fairy tale in general. But the only other thing as well is I had trouble with there's certain places, of course, in this build where the wallpaper's warped because I did play with the constrained floor elevation sheet. You can see that, of course, in part 1. But because of that, because I have levels that are halfway, and honestly, there's just a whole bunch of split leveling in this house, and because of that, certain wallpapers just get really warped on certain walls, and there's not really much I could do about it. Luckily, though, you don't really see it from most angles, so I was pretty happy about that. The other thing that I'm doing right now is making this kind of dining room. Now, this doesn't actually appear in the film, this room, I guess you would call it in general. But I had 2 reference images. One was, like I said, of the foyer with the piano in it, and then the other one is when the Duke comes to do the slipper fitting at the very end of the film. Now, the background in those Duke shots is actually different than like the other couple rooms, though I think it's implied that he's in the entry room, but the background doesn't look the background doesn't look the same. There's different wallpaper, there's different carpeting. So I was like, well, what am I gonna do? So I just compromised and made it a separate room that's alongside the entrance room. And of course, what is missing from this great manor, but a dining room. So this actually worked out rather perfectly. Yeah, so that's how this goes down. So now all the wallpapers are the same. I don't know if you would actually still have the Duke appear in this room if you were to actually make like a Let's Play or something in this build. But yeah, but at least it all fits and it's all visually correct, and that's made me happy in my little heart. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, you can really see that green, purple, or plum. I guess I'm just gonna call it plum because it's not quite pink and it's not quite purple. It's like a plum color. It's everywhere, and then there's like bright red furnishings and drapery. Like, I don't know who, like, and there's so many patterns. Like, I didn't notice how many things just have patterns on them. It was like I just felt like I was like overwhelming myself. But again, accuracy. Gotta go for it, right? But yeah, so you can see how I kind of improvised here, and just trying to make things match as well, with using the same kind of curtains, the same colorations, and the furniture, because even if you don't see it or you don't have reference for it, you can kind of guess what things will look like. And hopefully it all works out in the end there. Because remember that everything in this house needs to look kind of decadent, because the stepmother she's kind of like a dictatorship, if you want to think of it. Like, there are a couple really good versions of Cinderella out there, And in most of those, it makes it seem like the stepmother likes to live very richly, even though she doesn't have the money anymore. She's actually very poor at this point, but she keeps up appearances very, very well. And that's also one of the reasons why she wants her daughters to marry off well. I think they did that in the Walt Disney modern day live action remake. I think they portrayed that a little bit. But one of my favorite renditions of Cinderella actually is called Ever After. And Ever After, it's, what's her face? What's her name? Oh my gosh. Starts with a D. I'll remember it here in a second. But it's a old-timey rendition of Cinderella. It takes place in like old-time France, although everybody has English accents, of course. It's kind of a cliche, or what's it called? Campy, I guess. But I love that version. It's like, that's the one that makes me cry. I don't know why. Gosh, I can't remember her name. It's the actress. Or I will. I remember it in a second. If I don't, I'll put a caption because that will annoy me. Gosh. Yeah. All right, well, anyway, back to the bill just really briefly here. If you'll notice here, I did put in a formal bathroom because there wasn't really any room anywhere else for a bathroom, and I did want there to be a formal one because, of course, the stepmother and stepsisters need some place to go. I think it's also implied that you do a lot of, like, your bathing with, like, a basin or, like, a water basin in your room because they didn't really have lots of running water, I think, in this day and age, or, this like fairy tale day and age. So I just kind of like guess and checked with this, and put some curtains there so that they can like draw the curtains while they're bathing, I guess. So this was like the formal bathroom, and there was only one, and I noticed that too. I did another couple of Victorian builds, and for some reason, like even in those, like bathrooms were scarce. They didn't have bathrooms everywhere, and they certainly didn't have them on every floor. And I'm pretty sure that's just because plumbing wasn't a thing at a certain time and age. But Sims, I needed a bathroom, you know? And I did the same thing for the kitchen, which we're actually now moving on to. In the kitchen, I did add a refrigerator because in The Sims, if you don't have a fridge, let's face it, your Sims are gonna die. They starve to death really easily. So I did throw in like an old-time looking fridge in this kitchen area. So the kitchen, of course, is very like run down. It's not formal at all because this is where the servants would technically cook, not the people living, or the what do you call them, like ladies and lords. I don't know. But yeah, so this is Cinderella's room. We see this room in the film. We see this room in the film. If I can speak today, that would be great. So you can see my reference that I used. I tried to put in a fireplace instead of like a big kiln stove because we don't really have that. And some mismatched wood. Everything kind of looks a little bit older and run down and more earthy in this room. There's also going to be like piles of stuff in the corner to just accent all that. And then there's one important thing that I did make sure to add is I don't even know where I got them from, but it's custom content, and they're the like little bells, and I'm pretty sure they're supposed to be like ship bells. So like if you were building a ship, as in like a pirate ship kind of ship, like the bells would like sound off, and I made sure to put those three there because in the film those bells signify when one of her stepsisters or stepmother wants something, so Cinderella goes running. So those three bells made sure to go in there. I was very adamant about it. And the rest of this room ended up seeming very big. I didn't really intend for it to. I don't know. It just kind of ended up that way. The other thing I was sure to add in here, just as kind of like a nod off to the film, was that if you remember, there is a segment when Cinderella is introduced that she makes like trays or breakfast in bed for them. And as she creates those trays, each one has like a teacup and a little cup and a set of little cups on them. So I put in a table here in a second and make sure to put in a teacup with some little cups on it, as if Cinderella was preparing this breakfast for her people. I don't know, stepmother, stepsisters. But yeah, but otherwise, this room ends up being a little bit more plain than I imagined. But I was just like happy. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. This is done. Let's move on, you know? Liked it. gosh, I am still, I know it sounds really stupid, but I am still like stumped in my head about this actress's name, and I'm gonna give in and have to look this up here in a second because it is annoying me so much. Because I actually like her a lot. She's got this like weird look about her, but she's in a bunch of different like romantic comedies and stuff, and for some reason I always end up liking, or at least most of the movies that she's in, I like her. It's like her star image is like fun for me. Gosh, yeah. But Cinderella is cool. There's been so many different renditions of it. If you have a favorite version of Cinderella, go ahead and tell me. I'd love to hear it. It's just so cool, you know, rags to riches, everybody, and like the fairy tale of it. It's so pretty. Yeah, so at this point you see I'm still decorating, just putting in some random little things, some cookery and crockery and stuff, and some rudimentary lighting, because most of the lighting throughout this film is very much the same. Like, it's all like candelabras, I think you want to call them, and sconces on the wall. But yeah, so, and there's the twisty staircase, and this was a fun room up here because finally I was able to escape the green and the plum and put in some blue, which was such a welcome relief. I don't even know how to like function. I was like, oh look, it's blue, it's like this periwinkle color, but I was so happy about it. Yeah, the other thing that I noticed as well, let's see. No, wait, first let's talk about this hallway, because the hallway, this is, for some reason, I don't know why, but this is like the one room that I remember most from the film. Without, like, before I went back and started looking up reference, I remembered this hallway, and I don't know why. It only appears a couple times, but like for some reason it was just so striking to me. I don't know. But yeah, so I spent like actually a significant amount of time on this silly hallway, and it's not even that detailed, and it's just, you know, the colorations, and there's like a sconce in between every door, and there's the one big window with big curtains on it, and that's it. The other thing you'll see me do a lot here is I do like this kind of weird thing with those rugs where I layer them, so that I hope it looks a little bit more natural, even though there's those lines in between. But yeah, I mean, you do what you can, right? The only other place that seemed to have any kind of different color throughout this build is actually the evil stepmother's room. I didn't notice it again, but her room is very like dark purpley bluey. Like, yeah, I guess that's that's a great color. Purpley bluey, dark purpley bluey. That is a color. And lime greens, like that is her room. And if you notice throughout, like a lot of actual villainous things, for some reason, like purple and green, like can be interpreted as like dark or evil magic. I don't know why, but for some reason that seems to be like a color theme throughout a lot of films. Like off the top of my head, I think of Dr. Felicier from Princess and the Frog. He's very purple and green. The Ursula has a lot of purples. They are for some. Oh, and Scar, when he has like his song sing in The Lion King, there's like green smoke and fire everywhere. It's like this lime spooky green. So you don't even notice it, but they actually do use that here in Cinderella as well. Like I think of Lady Tremaine and I think of her red dress, right? Well, it turns out her room is very blue and green, and it's very sinister. So that was like a cool thing to realize. And again, it was also another welcome relief from the rest of the house after doing all the other harsh green and plum color. And it still ends up matching, so that's cool. The other thing is that her room is also supposed to be very dark, like it's supposed to be spooky, so I do put in some lights in here, but then I set them all to dim because I wanted it to be really dark. Yeah, you'll notice that this is now me working on Lady Tremaine's room. Yeah, oh, and the other fun part of this room actually was making the bed canopies. You'll see here in a minute I put in the beds, and they have like this big canopy drapery over the top, and I ended up just like layering just a bunch of different kinds of curtains on top of each other to try to get a nice effect. And I did the same thing with the cat's bed, Lucifer, which I actually did forget to do. I didn't put in any of their cat things, like a litter box or anything, because they weren't in the pictures and I just didn't even think about it. The only thing that he has is the cat bed right there next to Lady Tremaine's bed, which is probably not the best, but yeah, he's in there. I mean, if you were to play this, you'd have to add at least like a cat bowl or something, you know, make it better. But yeah, so it's doing all right at this point. And here comes all the curtains. So many curtains. Oh my goodness. Let's see. I guess the other thing is that this is, I believe, my last build that I'm going to do for Cinderella. Not like last ever. I don't mean to scare anybody or make them like aw or anything. Like anybody really would care. But yeah, but for Cinderella, there really aren't any other builds to make for her like Disney universe. I guess if you could call it that. Because if you don't know, I already did like all the builds that I really could from Beauty and the Beast, the original animated film, not the remake, which actually hadn't even come out at all when I put those videos out. But yeah, I did the castle, and I did Gaston's Tavern, and I did Belle's Cottage. And those are also all on my channel if you want to go check those out. So yeah, and then I wanted to do Cinderella, and then of course I want to do builds from a bunch of the other animated films as well. But I'm not really sure which ones to go for just yet. If you have any requests or recommendations on which builds to go for next, like let me know. I will definitely try. I would love to eventually do every single build from like the Disney animated films, though I don't know if that will be like possible or like even within a time range. Let's see, I guess absolutely I do think I want to do Sleeping Beauty's castle, because I think that will be kind of cool and like just old school medieval, you know? And of course Sleeping Beauty's cottage in the woods. And maybe even Maleficent's castle, which would just be like a darker take on hers. That would be hard though, I'm not sure. That'd be cool though. And then, let's see, Snow White. There's the dwarves' cottage, of course, and then her castle. But Snow White's castle is cool because I was looking at it, and it's kind of like low to the ground. It doesn't really have these big, high spire pillars, which is kind of nice. So that actually might be like a welcome like change from the stuff that I've done so far. So that might be cool. I might end up doing that. Let's see, there's Little Mermaid. At one point I think I did. I have to go check for it again. It's in my saved files. But I should have started Eric's castle from The Little Mermaid, and if I have that, like that'll be fun to finish. Because I'm pretty sure I did start it. It's a trip though, because you know it's like halfway in the water, and oh my goodness, it's so difficult. But you will notice at this point that I have started the Stepsisters Rooms. The Stepsisters, in case you don't know, are Anastasia and Drizella. Anastasia is the pink-dressed sister, and Drizella is the green-dressed sister. And at first, I was just going to make their rooms like mirrors of each other, like exactly. But it turns out that they actually are a little bit different from the pictures that I saw. I mean, they have the very similar themes and stuff, but they're actually like background patterns to like the rugs or the carpeting that's different. So I made sure to make those things a little bit different. And also the layout ends up being different because that's the layout that I saw in the film, and I was trying to get things pretty exact. The only room that you really see big, though, is Anastasia's, the pink room I'm working on right now. Drizella's room, you literally only see like an up-close shot of the bed with her in it. So I didn't really focus very much on the green room. I guess in my head I just maybe figured that maybe Anastasia's the elder sister or something, so she gets the bigger room or the more detailed room or whatever it is. So, because they're not twins, they're not supposed to be. They're actually supposed to be one older and one younger, I think. I think they are. I don't know. That's kind of interesting actually to think about. Because if they were twins, then why not like go completely superficial and just make them look alike, you know, like for archetypes, as far as archetypal figures or characters in the story. But they are different, and for some reason Anastasia is the good sister. This pink one right here, she's like the one that ends up being like nice, and she ends up with like a baker guy in the second film, I think, because I remember that, which was kind of weird. Yeah, because I never forgave them. Like, the big thing about Cinderella is, like, she's supposed to, like, forgive her step people for, like, her, like, treating her horribly, and, like, I wouldn't. I'd be, like, so vindictive. It'd be terrible. Um, but yeah, so, yeah, that was Anastasia's room. Now I'm gonna do the green one, which is actually a much quicker version of that. Yeah, I don't know what else. I'm actually running out of things to talk about, regrettably, and I'm sorry about that. That happens a lot. It's hard to talk for so long, but you get through it anyway, right? Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what builds I'll do next. I do have a couple of things saved up. I just never got around to editing them. I probably should have in the last few weeks, but I just never did. Didn't feel like it. I do have a couple short builds for my Apocalypse series, if you're interested in that. Yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It's cool stuff, man. Made sure to put that drapery canopy thing going on over top, which was interesting, to say the least. Yeah, I wish there was, like, a bigger canopy-like thing. Because, like, they gave us some, like, canopy thingamabobs in the Generations pack, but it's, like, they don't, like, they just look like curtains. They don't extend from the wall or anything, which is kind of silly. Yeah, I wished it was a little bit different, like this, some sort of actual canopy thing that sticks off, like the custom content that I seem to have. Um, But yeah, these girls are so indulged. I mean, their rooms are so pretty. And they have so much stuff. Like, I actually went in and put, like, little shoe boxes and stuff in, and, like, a hairbrush. And one girl has, like, a cheese plate. I found that when I was scrolling through my decor section. I was like, perfect. And I just stuck it on the end table, I think in Drizella's room. And I just couldn't resist, you know? And the other thing that I did add on this floor, you'll see it in a minute here, is a second bathroom, which I consider to be Cinderella's bathroom, because it's kind of like hidden in, like, this little attic space on this second floor. Because, I mean, in my head, I wouldn't consider that, if I were the evil stepmother and I was that much of a horrible person, like, I wouldn't let Cinderella use my bathroom. That sounds so mean, which, well, I guess she is mean, but yeah. But so, like, I wanted to make sure Cinderella had a place to go, right? That wasn't, like, outside in an outhouse. So I did add in, like, a little attic, like, run down, very simplistic. It's, like, just super bare necessities bathroom on this floor, which I imagine that the 3 step people here would not even touch. They'd be like, oh, it's cinder soots. You can't go in there. It'd be awful. Poor Cinderella. The other thing I did mention in the part 1 too is that for Cinderella's tower here, like, in the film, it's cool because there's, like, this big, like, beautiful spiral staircase that, like, she goes up, and I was just not able to accomplish that here in The Sims because just the limitations. It wouldn't let me put down spiral staircases because of the roofing and because of the split leveling. So I just had to go with ladders because the ladders were the only thing that would fit, which I even mentioned before makes it even more tragic that Cinderella has to climb up ladders to get to her bed every night. So can you imagine, like, all you do is work, you do all the laundry, and you clean this whole giant mansion all by yourself, and you do landscaping all by yourself, and you cook and you clean, do all of it, and then you have to climb up all the ladders to your tiny little attic room, and then that's where you get to sleep. And then she's still smiling with birds. It's like, no wonder she went crazy and started talking to mice, right? But yeah, so now you can see that I am working on Cinderella's room and her tower, which is considerably smaller than it looks in the film in this Sims version. I had to kind of I had to squeeze some things together to make it all fit. But I did test it with a Sim, and the Sim can actually get into the bed, and they can climb up all the ladders, no problem. So I was happy that at least all that worked. Like, I was scared that I was going to block something, and your Sim was going to do that, like, stupid little tantrum thing they do that stupid little tantrum thing that they do when they can't get somewhere. Like, it's really annoying. I'm like, okay, stop complaining. Just tell me you can't go that place, and I'll change it. Don't sit there and have, like, a whole animation, you know? But yeah, so this is her little room with her little window where she can look out over the kingdom and see the castle, I guess. But this is where she lives. It's so small. And there's, like, little things I didn't even notice. Like, she has, like, this tiny little vanity thing in her room, in the pictures, and in her vanity actually is like a broken mirror. Like it's like half a mirror with like broken shards on it. It looks so pathetic, and I felt so bad. And that was one thing I mentioned in my Beauty and the Beast build, that we don't have any broken mirrors in The Sims, and there didn't seem to be any custom content I could find that would do the same thing. So like, yeah, so she gets a whole mirror now in the Sims version, but in the movie she has a broken, sad mirror. Like that's so sad. I can't even. But yeah, and then the other thing that I did make sure to put in here was I have like this dress mannequin thing, and I made sure to make it like a pink dress. I prepared it beforehand here, if you'll notice, and that's the pink dress, of course, that her mice friends put together for her for the ball that, of course, her stepsisters subsequently tear apart, which is super great. But yeah, that's like part of Cinderella's room, and I wanted to make sure to add something, right? So that's in there, and it all turns out good in the end anyway, because she gets the prince. So, yeah. But other than that, the build is pretty much done. You've already seen some of my reference shots, and we're going to move on to the screenshots here. So, again, thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more Disney builds. And love you guys. See you next time. Bye.